In the first episode of Star Trek Discovery, Commander Michael Burnham, first officer of the USS Shenzhou, unwittingly becomes involved in a conflict against the Klingons, which turns out to be the start of the Federation-Klingon War of 2256-57. However, the only part of the situation caused by something she did on purpose was her attempted mutiny, which ultimately didn't go anywhere because the order to attack that she tried to give was belayed by her captain. So, why is she the one blamed for the entire conflict, including blaming herself? Let's take a look at the entire situation from start to climax. Essentially, a close reading of the events of the episodes The Vulcan Hello and Battle at the Binary Stars. The first episode opens with a Klingon leader giving a speech to his troops about how the Klingons must try to seek out the light of Kahless through a war to defend the honor of their empire. He suggests going to war with the United Federation of Planets, whom the Klingons see as encroaching too closely upon their territory, and not meaning it when they say they want to make peaceful negotiations. Initially, the Shenzhou spots a large unidentified object on the edge of Federation space and decides to examine it up close, with Michael taking a thruster suit to do so. At the time, the crew does not realize that the object belongs to the Klingons, known to them as the sarcophagus, since the Klingon ships surrounding the object are all cloaked. While standing on the structure, Michael unexpectedly encounters a Klingon and the two engage in hand-to-hand combat, in which Michael accidentally pushes the Klingon into impaling himself on his own batleth and ends up badly injured herself. At this point, the Shenzhou's crew are still unaware of the Klingon presence as Michael remains unable to inform them. Michael later wakes up in the Shenzhou's sickbay inside an anti-proton chamber meant to repair her damaged DNA. It's also heavily implied that she has a concussion. Against the advice of the ship's doctor, Michael leaves the chamber prematurely and goes to the bridge to tell Captain Philippa Georgiou and the senior staff that there are Klingons nearby and the crew is therefore in danger. Georgiou believes her and calls for a weapons lock on what is revealed to be a cloaked Klingon vessel, which immediately decloaks once the target lock is established. Later, Michael walks in on Georgiou having a video call with Starfleet Admiral Anderson about their situation, with the Admiral promising more Federation ships on the way to their location in case they need backup. Michael enters the conversation without permission, recommending to the Admiral that the Shenzhou should attack the Klingons in self-defense. After both Georgiou and Anderson dismiss her suggestion, Michael returns to her quarters and has a private video call with her Vulcan foster father Sarek, asking him what to do next. Michael returns to Georgiou and relays what Sarek told her. The Vulcan solution to an encounter with Klingons was to shoot first in order to gain the Klingons' respect and deter them from attacking the Vulcans, and it had always worked for them. Georgiou tries to tell her that Starfleet never shoots first unless absolutely necessary, and Michael insists that it is necessary, but Georgiou denies it. Ultimately, Michael attempts mutiny by rendering Georgiou unconscious, lying to the bridge crew about being given command, and orders a photon torpedo attack on the Klingons. Before the attack can be carried out, Georgiou recovers and stops her. Klingon reinforcements then arrive before Starfleet's can, and at the beginning of the next episode, the Klingons attack, starting the first battle of what would ultimately become the first Federation-Klingon War. First of all, notice how I said attempted mutiny. This is because Michael was not able to give an order and have it carried out before she was stopped. The crew were seemingly going to obey her, implying that they had her support under the false pretenses she set up for taking command. However, some would define a true mutiny as an officer who is not officially in command convincing other crew members to completely overthrow the authority of whoever is in command. Michael definitely did something against Starfleet's rules, but she wasn't successful in doing anything except giving an order that was never executed. What's important to look at here is why Michael took the actions that she did. She genuinely believed that she was protecting the ship and its crew, if not potentially the entire Federation. She was logical in her presented reasoning for attacking first. When she incapacitated the captain and tried to give the order to fire, she knew that she was committing an act that would get her punished as soon as she was found out, but she saw that as a price to pay for everyone's safety, including the captain whom she had assaulted. She considered every option before finally arriving at her decision to take such drastic measures. So, if the situation wasn't Michael's fault, then whose was it? The answer is, pretty obviously, the Klingons. We'll get back to that in a moment, but first I want to talk about how even on the Federation side of things, Michael wasn't the only one involved or who made any relevant decisions. When Michael first informs the bridge crew that there are Klingons in the vicinity, it's Captain Georgiou who orders the weapons lock on the cloaked Klingon vessel. When Michael calls Sarek, he describes the Vulcan's solution to Michael, and even if he wasn't endorsing it, he surely must have known, logically, that he would be giving her the idea. Now back to the Klingons. They were looking to start a war with the Federation for their own reasons, even before the encounter with the Shenzhou took place. They refused to make peaceful negotiations with the Federation regarding their concerns about their territory being encroached upon, and they were in Federation space at the time. They decloaked their ship once the Shenzhou had a target lock on it, even though they didn't attack right then, having already called upon reinforcements when their torchbearer was accidentally killed by Michael. Even though Michael gives the order for the Shenzhou to attack, it never actually does. Whether or not they could determine that the Shenzhou was about to shoot, their reinforcements were already well on the way. If they hadn't been called in when the torchbearer was killed, they most likely would have been when the weapons lock was established, if the Klingons were able to sense that. The battle that ensues, officially dubbed the Battle at the Binary Stars, is cited as the one that starts the war after Michael once again inadvertently kills a Klingon, this time attempting to save her captain's life when their plan to infiltrate the Klingon ship and take a prisoner fails. Unfortunately, the Klingon she ends up killing is T'Kuvma, a significant leader of the Klingons. Michael fails to stop the Klingons from attacking or killing Georgiou, even though she tries everything she can. One significant question to ask is if Michael's order to attack the Klingon ship during her attempted mutiny had been successful, would what happened next be her fault? Since it didn't happen, we'll never know for sure. If her order to attack had resulted in the Klingons backing down like she believed, she could be credited with resolving the conflict, with the ends justifying the means. But if the Klingons had shot back, would she still be to blame? I don't think so, because she would have no way of knowing that the Klingons wouldn't do the same thing they always did when having such encounters with the Vulcans. Another thing to consider is why Michael was in Starfleet in the first place. When she first graduated from the Vulcan Science Academy, her intent was to join the Vulcan Expeditionary Group. However, instead of allowing her entry, the director forced Sarek to choose only one of his children to join the group, Michael or Spock. Sarek figured that the group would be more accepting of a half-human Vulcan than a full human, so he chose Spock, who didn't end up joining the group anyway since he instead chose to attend Starfleet Academy. If Michael had been with the Expeditionary Group, either because the director had allowed her in the first place, or if Sarek had allowed Spock and Michael to decide between themselves instead of deciding for them, Michael wouldn't have been on the Shenzhou at all. If she were on a Vulcan ship that ended up having a standoff with Klingons, the Vulcan hello would have most likely been enacted on principle without her even having to suggest it, let alone take matters into her own hands. So, was the situation Michael's fault and hers alone? Absolutely not. The entire affair was a combination of bad luck and ultimately poor decisions that were made out of logic and genuine concern for others. The Klingons were always going to attack and even go to war as an expansionist empire. They were just looking for an excuse. That excuse turned out to be the killing of their torchbearer, which was again accidental on Michael's part, and even when she did shoot and kill their leader T'Kuvma, she only did so because her captain's life was in danger and she was also defending herself. She and Georgiou both went into that situation knowing that they may have to kill in self-defense, and Georgiou was the one who approved the infiltration plan. Since the start of the war wasn't Michael's fault, then why was she blamed for it? My guess is that Starfleet wanted someone to blame other than themselves, Ambassador Sarek, or the late Captain Georgiou. Michael did plead guilty to mutiny, but it seems like there wasn't any real effort put in to prove that her actions weren't the reason that the conflict started. Michael's past experiences with Klingons, most notably the attack that killed her biological parents, are viewed as reason for her to have acted irresponsibly and out of emotion rather than logic, but I think it's more like her experiences both on Doctari Alpha and when defending herself from the Torchbearer made her understand just how ruthless the Klingons really were and how important it was to keep them from attacking the Shenzhou. As for the rest of Starfleet and the general public blaming her, both her attempted mutiny and the battle at the Binary Stars likely made the news simultaneously, and people just conflated the two events as being directly connected. If they were aware of Michael killing T'Kuvma in self-defense, they must also know that she didn't do that with the intent to start a conflict, but instead to protect her captain. However, people probably didn't care why she did either that or attempt mutiny, regardless of whether her reasoning was reported on, only that she did those things and the war started soon after. Maybe people thought that her killing T'Kuvma ultimately wasn't worth it since it didn't result in Captain Georgiou's life being saved. Honestly, blaming Michael Burnham for the Federation-Klingon War feels a lot like blaming Su'Kal for the burn, Jean-Luc Picard for anything he did as Locutus of Borg, or Ambassador Spock for failing to save Romulus in the Prime Universe, and or the destruction of Vulcan in the alternate reality. It would also be comparable to how, about 100 years before the battle at the Binary Stars, the Vulcan sub-commander T'Pol was blamed for the Andorians' attack on the P'Jem Monastery. The parties who were truly at fault in that situation were the Andorian attackers, as well as the Vulcans who were keeping a secret military base located beneath the monastery for the purpose of spying on the Andorians. The Vulcans were looking for someone to blame, and although T'Pol was one of several people involved with rightfully exposing the secret base, the Vulcans made her the lone scapegoat for the entire affair. Once again, it was the Klingons who escalated the encounter, called in reinforcements, and started a full-scale war out of the battle at the Binary Stars. Most importantly, the 100 million lives that were lost due to the war cannot be laid at Michael Burnham's feet, and their blood is not on her hands. The Klingons were going to carry out their plans regardless of anything she or any other Federation citizen did. If the Shenzhou standoff near the sarcophagus hadn't ended up being their excuse, something else would have. Although Michael did deserve to be reprimanded for her attempted mutiny specifically, though life in prison seems a bit harsh, it's absolutely unfair for her actions to be blamed for the entire war by any characters, including herself, or by Star Trek fans in real life. So what do you think? Do you agree with my arguments? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. I've got other videos on Star Trek and many other kinds of media, so be sure to subscribe if you like what you see. Live long and prosper, and I'll see you next time.